And here we are again. And if anybody's out there, welcome. And say hello. Hello there, Karen from Scott Township, welcome. And Marlena, knives out and veils on, well done. Hello there, Joan. This is as it's meant to be. And Lex from Boston, welcome. And hello to Diane. Well, thank you, James. It was yesterday, but, you know, the principle is still the same. Another year older and deeper in debt. Yes, I believe there are quite a few helicopters, Anne. Hello, Debbie. I'm quite looking forward to it as well. Yes, Lex, it's interesting that was the first thing that you read by Wilde, was Salome. First thing, I think, one of the first things I read, believe it or not, was The Picture of Dorian Gray, before I ever got in, when I was still young and before I ever got into any of the plays. We'll try to fulfill your life goal, Lex, in the next few years. We did do it, 2008, but we're going to try and do it again soon. And when I say soon, I mean in the next few years. So we have the Netherlands back and Dublin is back. It's very nice to see these people coming back. And indeed these countries coming back. It's amazing the outreach you can get with these. Thank you, PICT Classic Theatre. Glad you noticed. Hello, Bill and Joan. It's pretty humid, Judy. Not as bad as it can get. James, yes, it is Roger in the background. I was about to explain that. I know Pittsburgh is back. So it should be. After all, I'm here. Yes, for those tuning in, the music we have in the background is by an Irish composer. In fact, he's one of the most renowned and regarded Irish composers, a man called Roger Doyle. In fact, there is an Irish Academy of Letters. The Irish word for it is Éisteanna. And he's been a member of that for a long time, but he was recently made what is in the Irish word a she, which is the equivalent of being a sage or a senior member. He would be considered a national treasure, which he is. His creations, his compositions are quite remarkable. Works a lot in electronic music as well as his use of the piano. But anyway, when we first did the production at the Gate Theatre, which I mentioned a couple of times, in fact, many times, one of the beauties of the production was that as we were rehearsing over a 4-week period, Roger would sit behind the actors with a piano and improvise. And what resulted was an almost constant score for the 2 hours of acting, mostly of improvised music. Which, surprisingly enough, he never wrote down, he never notated, but he repeated it perfectly for every performance, for each revival, for 20 years. And when I did the production here in Pittsburgh, Roger came over and played the music again. It is quite extraordinary. And what you're listening to is the music he created for Salome's dance, which was a beautiful piece of choreography, which Stephen Burkhoff initially created, using the talents of Olwen Fuere, our first Salome. And it was the dance of the 7 veils, but it was done in a totally modern sense, and she never took off any clothes. It was, the whole thing was mind, was mimetic. But 7 items of clothing were removed, and importantly, where the audience would sit night after night, absolutely locked on this thing. And it happened again in Pittsburgh when we did it here. And Nicole Underhay played Salome. Because the dance takes place in the audience's mind. It is what you perceive. And that's the beauty of great theatre. What you perceive is what you understand, is what you actually see. When we were first discussing the production, Stephen Burkhoff and myself talking about Herod's reaction to the dance, he actually wanted the audience to concentrate on the face of Herod rather than the dance. He said, that's not going to happen. Because my face is far less interesting than watching a very beautiful woman dancing the dance of the seven veils. But his point was that it is in the imagination of Herod that the dance truly takes place. Therefore, there was no need for her to take clothes off. It was the audience should be taking her clothes off in their imagination. It's that level of corruption that Oscar was seeking and that the production sought. And anyway, this was the piece of music. I'll let you listen to it for a moment. It's wonderful how music can evoke memory. Every time I hear that played, in my mind, I'm taken right back onto the stage, right back into the scene, right back into the moment. It's sound is the most extraordinary phenomenon that can take place within the brain, and how it can evoke memory just as much. And every sense can, that we only have 5 ways to perceive the world around us, and they are our 5 senses, and each one of those can create a remarkable response. But in terms of art, and especially in terms of theatre, it is how we see and how we hear that dominates everything. And that's why theatre, in fact, all art, will approach at least one sense and hopefully more. But our understanding of the world, and therefore our understanding of a play, of theatre, of life, of anything, is dominated by those simple 5 senses. And as I say, you hear a piece of music and suddenly you are literally transported. You are taken back in time. You are taken to different places. It's wonderful the way the memory works. I just wish I could remember people's names. Well, anyway, that's the curse of getting older, which I just managed to do yet again. So, hello, Dennis. I'm glad you're ready, primed and ready. Wonderful. There you are. Barb and Marianne, how wonderful. A miracle happened. It's Oscar. Oscar is looking after you. I promise you. He works miracles. Remarkable genius. What other words do we have? Yeah. So, are we okay? Yeah, what time are we? Yes, we should be beginning. Okay, so are we all sitting comfortably? Because I will begin. First of all, I want to say very briefly a word concerning the current situation. If you've seen our webpage or any of the social media that we're attached to, you'll notice that we've made a statement, and that I want to say that PICT Classic Theatre stands solidly behind the Black community, the protests that have been taking place, the peaceful protests. We actively want everybody to do one thing. And we did it. We put out a statement. We then did this one thing and we altered our statement. And that is, we need to listen, not to come up with solutions that are half-baked, but we need to listen. as we have never listened before to people who have not been heard. And that's all I want to say on this subject. I could go on for the full hour of this. I'm not going to do that. That's not why we're here. But I want to make that simple point. Please, please stop talking and listen. Right. So back to Salome, and a couple of things first before we go on into the second portion of this. I want to there were a couple of points made to me by emails and what have you. And first, it was the question of the name of Yochanan. So I went to the ultimate source, which is, of course, Wikipedia. And I'm going to quote to you. I did mention that you could not put on a play where you mentioned God or where you mentioned Jesus or the name of any biblical saint. And Saint John the Baptist was a biblical saint, so you couldn't use his name. So Oscar chose the name Yochanan, Jokanan. Now, looking it up, the answer was there, and I remember as soon as I looked it up, I remembered I'd looked it up years ago, and then I'd forgotten. Yochanan, various transliterations to the Latin alphabet of the Hebrew name, which basically means Yahweh is gracious, God is good, in other words. The name is ancient, recorded as the name of Yohanan, high priest of the Second Temple around 400 BCE, became a very popular Christian given name in reference to either the Apostle or John the Baptist. So John is another derivative of it. Oscar didn't make it up. All he did was alter the spelling of it from Yohanan to Yochanan. But it is, in fact, one of the great variants that we can discover that we finally understand as the name John. The identity of Salome, who was she? In the Bible, in the whole description in the Gospels of the dance of Herod and his wife Herodias and her daughter, she is not called Salome. So I'm going to go back again to the fount of all wisdom, Wikipedia. Herodias' daughter, Herodias being the wife of Herod, is arguably not Salome the disciple who is a witness at the crucifixion of Jesus. Mark 15, verse 40. And as I said last week, I think, there is the only Salome that you will find in the Gospels is this woman who was at the foot of the cross with Mary, the mother of Jesus. However, in the apocryphal book of the resurrection of Christ, which is attributed to the Apostle Bartholomew, the names are Salome the temptress among the women who went to the empty tomb, perhaps reflecting an early tradition that Salome, the daughter of Herodias, was at the tomb, that it was in fact the same person. We will never know. But what we do know is that according to the Gospels, the woman who danced for Herod was simply referred to as the daughter of Herodias. There was a Salome who was at the foot of the cross, according to the Gospel of Mark, and there is the apocryphal possibility from one of the other Gospels that were the non-canon Gospels, that Salome was the temptress who was also in the Garden of Gethsemane waiting at the tomb. So there you have it, the little bit of historical background. Let's go back to the play. Now, a couple of things. I want to reprise a couple of points I made last week. The lusciousness of the language that Wilde uses in this play is almost, I've heard it described and I've used the term myself, it's almost language pornography. It is so luscious, it's so delicious, it's so seductive, it's absolute, it's burying yourself in the best chocolate dessert you could ever imagine. This is language at its most heightened, and his use of language in this sense, and I'm a lifelong theatrical minimalist. There is nothing minimalist about the use of the words in this play. Luscious. I often talk about the way we've undervalued words like tremendous or terrifying, worthy of terror, or fabulous, worthy of fable. Luscious is a wonderful word because it's something that is better than tasty, more impressive than any other description of what your senses can understand. Lusciousness, like the ultimate soft bath towel wrapping around yourself. That's what the language of this play does, and Oscar does it very deliberately. As I've called these particular webinars, the language of desire, because it is taking that one emotion and bringing it to a heightened level where all the possibilities of desire are examined. Taking the word to the very extent of its meaning and its image. He uses, as I said last week, onomatopoeia as a form of understanding. He uses alliteration to penetrate your brain. He uses repetition to constantly using repetition so that it's almost like a drum beat within you. I don't know if any of you are Doctor Who fans, but it's like the famous double beat, which is the heartbeat of a Time Lord. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. And that repetition used in that context, I know I bring everything into these talks. That is exactly what Oscar's doing with the use of repetition. And I'll try to demonstrate that in a few moments. So that when you read the play, it is not sufficient that you say, oh, yes, he said the same. Oh, he said the same. It is why and how many times these same phrases, these same words, these same ideas are repeated. And as we said last week, right from the beginning of the play, the moon, the moon, the moon, the moon. Look at the moon, how lovely the moon is. The moon has a strange look. The moon is like a little piece of money. Everything is brought into that context of the purity of the moon, the goddess Diana, the virgin goddess, which Salome takes upon herself. She becomes the ultimate virgin, ready to be corrupted. He uses contrastive images so that you are never left in any doubt. If you listen, if you are listening, I'm saying listen again. If you listen, you are never left in any doubt as to the meaning, the depth of meaning of what the characters are talking about. So we left it last week with Salome hearing the voice of doom, the totally disconnected voice. Yochanan is in a cistern, a big hole in the ground. She cannot see him. She can only hear this voice echoing out of the ground. And what is this voice saying? And we talked about it last week. The Lord hath come, the Son of Man hath come, the centaurs have hidden themselves in the rivers, and the sirens have left the rivers and are lying beneath the leaves of the forest. This wonderful and peculiar mix of Old and New Testament prophecy mixed with Greek fable, so that Oscar is using our imaginations to the extreme. He's bringing religion in it, but he's not making it simply Christian or Judeo-Christian religion. He's bringing all European religious tradition into it. He's bringing the idea of the Greek gods. I could say the Latin gods, but the Latin gods were just a variation on the Greek gods. He's bringing something into it that is the higher power that can control and punish us all. So we get this notion, the Lord is coming, meaning the Messiah, and the ideas of centaurs and sirens. So as I said last week, it is no ordinary John the Baptist. This is the Yochanan of Oscar Wilde. And when he speaks both biblically and Oscar's variations on that theme. Rejoice not, land of Palestine, because the rod of him who smote thee is broken. But from the seed of the serpent shall come forth a basilisk, and that which is born of it shall devour the birds. If that wasn't obscure, nothing ever was. No, I've never worked out what all that means. But it is a kind of word usage that is completely seductive to the uncorrupted mind. And this is the point that we left it at last week. The uncorrupted mind is overwhelmingly impressed by words. Words act as a seduction. Words produce ideas. Ideas develop. And once an idea has been developed, you can't put the lid on it again. It is the Pandora's box of the imagination. Give a young uncorrupted mind an idea that they can run with, and run with it they will. And that, as I said last week, is where how cult leaders succeed. How teenagers who run off with the first cult leader that they find. The fascination in the power of words that leads, as I said, to Waco, to Jonestown, and to so many others who have ended up in cults and mystic faiths and whatever, or any faith for that matter. Salome's reaction when she hears that voice, what a strange voice, I would speak with him. And each time Yochanan speaks, it is with the voice of one seeking out and condemning corruption. He says, who is she who hath given herself to the young men of Egypt, who are clothed in fine linen and purple, whose shields are of gold, whose helmets are of silver, whose bodies are mighty? Salome, young girl, virgin, innocent, but listening. And her reaction brilliantly expressed with the phrase, but he is terrible. He is terrible. Terrible in, as I said, that pure meaning. Worthy of terror, to terrify, to say words that are terrifying, that can imbue within you a sense of terror, something horrific. Salome's fascination with Yochanan begins as a fascination with words, and particularly with the voice. And I want to come back to the word fascination. It's going to be important. Oscar is using the voice, and how do we know why the voice? How is John the Baptist described? The voice of one crying in the wilderness. When you are in the wilderness, you don't just mutter, you cry. You cry, and cry as in shout. You shout out your message because that is the only way you can be heard. The madman in the desert is screaming. Whether he's mad or not is irrelevant. But he is screaming, and it is a fascinating object to observe and to understand. Oscar is establishing the notion of fascination as a theatrical motif. She is fascinated by that voice. And initially that fascination for Yochanan is concerning what he says, and especially concerning her mother, Herodias. And he says of Herodias, bid her rise up from the bed of her abominations, from the bed of her incestuousness, that she may hear the words of him who prepareth the way of the Lord, that she may repent of her iniquities, though she will never repent. She will stick fast in her abominations. What a wonderful thing to be heard being said about your mother, especially when you don't particularly like her. It's almost enthralling to hear somebody who has the authority of being a prophet saying things you daren't say yourself. Gives you a kind of confidence, a kind of belief, a kind of faith. Her fascination with the prophet by this point is so complete that she disregards everything else. She doesn't listen to anything else other than the voice of the prophet, because that is what we tend to do. Once we have bought into a concept or an idea, we tend to reject everything else. We don't listen. We stop listening. What we are doing is saying, I've selected that. That's what I now believe. Nothing else matters. It's as if she can no longer hear other voices, only the voice of Yochanan. Even the young Syrian who she uses to release Yochanan, who swears his love for her, who offers himself and his life for her, she ignores him. He kills himself, and she doesn't even notice. She is totally concerned with this creature of the desert, and she begins an examination of him. When he appears, the fascination has become utterly complete. She starts with, what does he look like? His eyes, above all, that are terrible, that word again, worthy of terror. They are like black holes burned by torches in a Tyrian tapestry. They are like black caverns where dragons dwell. They are like the black caverns of Egypt in which the dragons make their lairs. They are like the black lakes troubled by fantastic moons. You notice that mix again of fable, that he is fabulous, he is terrible, and he is fabulous, worthy of fable. Black cavern dragons, black lakes, fantastic moons. How wasted he is. He's like an ivory statue, like an image of silver. I'm sure that he is chaste as the moon is. He is like a moonbeam, like a shaft of silver. His flesh must be cool, like ivory. She's already compared herself to the moon. The moon is virgin. The moon is pure. The moon has an innocence about her. And because her fascination with his look and with his assumed purity is so extreme, she's really comparing herself to him and he to her. She wants to get a closer look. And what is Yokanan's response? Who is this woman who is looking at me? I will not have her look at me. Wherefore does she look at me with her golden eyes under her gilded eyelids? I do not know who she is. I do not wish to know who she is. It is not to her that I would speak. In other words, you have now a wonderful contrast of she who is utterly fascinated, utterly and completely, I was going to use the word in love with, and I think it's the right, it is right in this context, but not in any romantic sense at this point. It is that she is in thrall with Yokanan. He is that image of perfection and terribleness that she has possibly craved and now cannot escape from. It's occupying her imagination. For Yokanan, he knows what he sees. He knows what's looking at him. He knows the danger of it, because Salome is ultimate temptation. There is a purity and a beauty about her that is so terrifyingly tempting. And we know what's going to come along because of that. She announces herself, I am Salome, daughter of Herodias, princess of Judea. And his instant response is, back, daughter of Babylon. Come not near the chosen of the Lord. Thy mother has filled the earth with the wine of her iniquities, and the cry of her sins has come up to the ear of God. So in other words, Oscar again building this wonderful image of you're almost seeing two monsters. And I don't mean that derogatively, but they are, it's Godzilla against King Kong in a sense. These two enormous, monstrous creations, one with all the passion and danger of a virgin purity and innocence corrupting itself with words, and the other, this dangerous saint, this voice crying in the wilderness, this fanatic follower of God. So these two, as I say, monstrous creatures facing off with one another. He tells her to go away, and her immediate response is back to the word, back to the voice. Speak again, Yokanan. Thy voice is wine to me. Very interesting image that. Thy voice is wine to me. She is intoxicated by his words, by the sound of his voice. Speak again, Yokanan, and tell me what I must do. Tell me what I must do. She is offering herself to him, just as one does to a cult leader, if you like. But she is making the offer. I am here. Tell me what I must do. There you have it. She has become a prisoner of the fascination. She has, as it were, entered the cult. Oscar takes us deeper. Because if our gods do not serve us, we punish them. It was one of the great truths. And if I'm offending anybody of a religious frame of mind, I'm sorry, but it is the great truth. When our gods do no longer serve us, or we perceive it that way, we punish them. Yokanan cries out to her, daughter of Sodom, come not near me. Daughter of Sodom, he insults her in every way. Daughter of Babylon, daughter of Sodom. He knows what she is. She is danger to him. She is corruption to him. Cover thy face with a veil, scatter ashes on thine head, get thee to the desert and seek out the Son of Man. And he's just telling her, what to do. You want to be saved? That's what you need to do. What is her response? Completely corrupt from his concept, completely innocent from hers. Who is he, the Son of Man? Is he as beautiful as thou art, Yokanan? So her perception is one of the physical. and his is the spiritual. Again, two great monsters facing off. So she then leads into this rather exquisite sequence in the play, and I'm not going to dwell too much on it, but the words are the power. She looks at him and says, Yochanan, I am amorous of thy body. Thy body is white like the lilies of the field that the mower hath never mowed. The mower hath never mowed. Virgin. Thy body is white like the snows that lie on the mountains, like the snows that lie on the mountains of Judea and come down into the valleys, virgin white. The roses in the garden of the Queen of Arabia are not so white as thy body. And on and on and on she goes until she comes to the moment. Let me touch thy body. What does he say? Back, daughter of Babylon, by women came evil into the world. We always say that, don't we? Speak not to me, I will not listen to thee. I listen but to the voice of the Lord God. Calling down, protecting himself. He knows the danger that she is. And her immediate response, as any petulant young teenager would say, thy body is hideous. It's like the body of a leper. It's like a plastered wall where vipers have crawled, like a plastered wall where scorpions have made. And she immediately turns it. But she doesn't give up. She tries again. It is of thy hair that I am enamored. Thy hair is like clusters of grapes, like the clusters of black grapes that hang from the vine trees of Edom in the land of the Edomites. It is like the cedars of Lebanon, like the great cedars of Lebanon that give their shade to the lions and all of that. Goes on and on and on about how wonderfully black his hair is. The silence that dwells in the forest is not as black. There's nothing in the world so black as thy hair. Let me touch thy hair. Back, go away, don't want anything to do with you. Yet again, she's tempting, she's so tempting. And her descriptions of him are so seductive because she's learning the power of the word as well. The power of her fascination is never diminished. Like any acolyte, she will be heard and she will be accepted. Thy hair is horrible. It's covered with mire and dust. It's like a crown of thorns that they placed on thy forehead. Interesting allusion, that one. And again, insult, 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 but then turning and coming to the crucial point. It is thy mouth that I desire, Yochanan. Thy mouth is like a band of scarlet on a tower of ivory, like a pomegranate cut with a knife of ivory, like it's redder than roses. It's like red, like the blast of trumpets that herald you. But anyway, it's very red. But it is so tempting. It is something, the mouth, the lips, sexually, the lips are so seductive. And they are also where the voice comes from, which is building an image about the mouth and its beauty. It's almost idolic. She's creating his mouth and him, in consequence, as an idol. She is beginning to worship her newfound idol, her newfound God. It is like the bow of the king of the Persians that is painted with vermilion and tipped with coral. There is nothing in the world so red as thy mouth. And then, the most dangerous sentence in the entire play. Let me kiss thy mouth. We've reached the moment of ultimate desire, and all through the use of words. Just using words. Oscar has brought us to this moment, this absolute. She has asked him to tell her what to do. She is now telling him what she will do. Let me kiss thy mouth. And he says, no, never, never, daughter of Sodom, never. But for every word of warning that Yochanan now offers, she will keep repeating that phrase because she is now fanatic. Let me kiss thy mouth, said over and over and over until in the final moment of desperation, when they're almost screaming at one another, the line turns. And that's why the repetitions that he writes are incredibly important. These are why you got to watch for these. Those repetitions are important. Let me kiss thy mouth. Let me no. Let me kiss thy mouth. No. Let me kiss thy mouth. Until you get to that climactic point when the line changes. I will kiss thy mouth, Yochanan. I will kiss thy mouth. And it is no longer an act of seduction. It is no longer an act of worship. It is what a fanatic does, becomes a threat. Let me come back to my point. When our gods do not serve us, we punish them. For every idol that has been raised up, it's also been torn down. That's the important element in this, that she has raised him up to a point of utter desire, a point of utter fascination. She has developed a fanatic desire for him, and that desire must be satisfied or she will destroy him. Then Herod comes. And here we have a similar, sort of a parallel track, because Herod is also the victim of his own desire. He too creates an image or creates worship of an image of fascination that will in fact create complete havoc, that will be the cause of the destruction, if you like. The culmination of the play is caused not just by her desire to kiss Yochanan's mouth, but the desire that Herod has to be satisfied by Salome. And whereas with her it begins almost with a kind of religious fascination, with Herod it is pure, unadulterated, carnal desire. We see from the moment that he arrives, and his wife sees it too, he cannot get his mind or his eyes off Salome. His fascination with her is dominating his imagination. And no matter what he tries to turn the conversation to, or what the people around him try to turn the conversation to, he will always bring it back to Salome. At one point, quite early after his arrival, he tries to tempt her. Come and drink wine with me. I have here a wine that is exquisite. Caesar himself sent it to me. And here we go. Dip into it thy little red lips that I may drain the cup. He wants that shared contact, that shared physical contact with her mouth. The mouth, yet again. He offers her fruit because she's turned down the wine. I'm not thirsty, Tetrarch. So he offers her fruit. I love to see in a fruit the mark of thy little teeth. Bite but a little of this fruit, and then I will eat what is left. That is so wonderfully corrupt. It's so overtly sexual. It is wonderful. It's all about, I want my mouth on your mouth. I want my mouth where your mouth is. But she gets it, and she says, I'm not hungry, Tetrarch. Eventually, he comes up with another one that's going to be a clue towards where the play is leading. Salome, come and sit next to me. I will give thee the throne of thy mother. He's not talking about the chair. He's talking about the job. He is saying, I want you. I will get rid of your mother and you can be with me, because he wants her. This is pure, unadulterated desire. Not desire elevated to adoration, but desire as lust. And it is the language of lust. He will, as we will soon find out, offer her anything to get what he wants from her, no matter how simple it is. Because when it gets to that point of adoration, in a way, it's not the intensity or the level, it is to get anything, to get any recognition of the desire that you have. For that to be recognized by the one who is desired is what you will strive for, what you will yearn for, and what you will almost sacrifice anything for. None of this is of interest to Salome because she has bigger plans. So ultimately, and after an awful lot of chasing around the houses, as it were, Herod makes a simple request. And again, repetition. The request is denied and denied and denied over and over again. Not simply by Salome, but also by Salome's mother. And the request is quite simple. Dance for me, Salome. And Herodias immediately, do not dance, my daughter. She knows what he wants. It is her body. It is the young, innocent, teenage, virgin body that he wants to see, he wants to luxuriate in. Again, let's go back to that phrase, luxuriate, the lusciousness of her young body. Dance for me. Do not dance, my daughter. Dance for me. Dance. Not just dance for me, but dance for me. Do it for me. And over again, I will not dance, Tetrarch. I will not dance, Tetrarch. I will not dance. Constantly the asking. If you dance for me, I'll do this. If you dance for me, I'll do that. If you dance for me, I will give you anything you want, even to the half of my kingdom. Now, he's not talking about dividing his kingdom into two. He's saying there are two people ruling this kingdom, me and your mother. So you can have her half. Again, that incredibly decadent offer of, I'll get rid of you, mother, and you can be my wife, and you can rule with me. He is that desperate. For what? For her to dance? It's not the dance he wants to see. He wants the power over her. He wants her to be subject to his power, that he can see her, can luxuriate in her innocence, her beauty, whatever. It is absolutely disgusting. If you dance for me, you may ask of me what you will, and I will give it you, even to the half of my kingdom. Click in her brain. You mean that? Yeah. Do you swear it, Tetrarch? I swear it. By what do you swear it, Tetrarch? By my life, by my crown, by my gods. He swears by his life, by his crown, by his gods. He will give her whatever she asks for, even to the half of his kingdom. So she agrees. I mean, it's a very good offer. But importantly, she agrees without naming the price. She doesn't say, well, if you give me this, I will dance. She says, okay, I'll dance. Because he's made a pledge in front of witnesses, in front of his gods. And he has always said, I am a man of my word. I always keep my word. I'm trusted for my word. My word is law, all of that. So she agrees without naming the price. And she dances. She dances a dance of 7 veils. It is seduction. It is the ultimate striptease. She is, to that extent, exposing herself completely to this man. She has taken, remember, she started out as somebody with a sense of virginity and her own purity and her own beauty, like the moon, like the goddess Diana, like all of that. And now she is saying, yes, okay, I will dance for you. And she exposes her body to Herod in a dance. Now, there's an important thing about the dance. And when we were originally doing our production of it, we had a lot of conversation about this idea that where is the dance taking place? And the dance really is, I was talking just before we started the webinar, that the dance is not what she does on the stage. There are productions where she will take off all her clothes. There are productions in ours she didn't take off anything. She mimed the removal of 7 articles of clothing. And it was a very modern expression of it, because she took off 2 long gloves, mimed, 2 stockings, mimed, a dress, mimed, a bra, mimed, and a pair of panties, mimed. So you saw her taking off 7 articles of clothing to become naked, and yet she hadn't taken off one single thing, because the dance takes place here. And the point that we discussed, and Berkhoff discussed with me a lot, was this notion that it is in Herod's imagination that the true dance takes place. Because as she is slowly divesting herself of each of the 7 veils, his imagination is elevating it to something that is deeply, profoundly sexual. It is a kind of coitus. It is a kind of lovemaking, or in this sense, it is rape. But it is the rape within the mind. And what is wonderful is that the audience is sharing in it. The audience is watching in fascination. And every time we did that play for 20 years, every performance we did, 2 different Salomes, the audience's attention was so focused on that action, on that striptease in the mind. The audience became complicit in the rape. Wonderful writing. So she has done the deed. She has danced for him. And now he offers her anything she wants. What do you want? Anything you like. I'll give you anything that you want, even to the half of my kingdom. What do you ask of me? And she says a phrase which again will be repeated over and over and over in that, dare I say, Doctor Who-like drumbeat, heartbeat. And the thing she asks, the thing she says, very simple. Give me the head of your Canaan. That's all she says. It's about the only line she says for, the next 15 minutes of the play. Just as he became completely obsessed with the body, with the sexuality, with the physicality of this girl, she has become obsessed with the head of Yukonan and what it could offer her. What Oscar is now doing is going to take us even deeper into the realms of desire, right to the point of lust. She obsessed with the head of Yukonan, he obsessed with her body, with the dancing, and the dance represents a kind of physical abuse. The battle of desire and obsession, of lust, is now really going to take place. Godzilla and King Kong, it's a new King Kong, but it's the same Godzilla, and the fight is going to be horrendous. He will give her anything. He begs her, take something else. Don't ask that. I can't, because he's terrified, because he believes it's a prophet. He believes what the prophet is saying. He is absolutely terrified of what she's asked. He starts off with an emerald. I'll give you an emerald, a beautiful round emerald. Caesar's minion gave it. If you look through it, you can see things. It's a telescope. No, give me the head of your Canaan. I'll give you, my peacocks. I've got these beautiful, they're all white. There's 100 of them. They fly in the gardens. The most beautiful speech about peacocks flying through the trees and landing around the lake and everything. It's beautiful writing. You are seduced by it. You would be saying, take the peacocks, take the peacocks. Give me the head of your Canaan. He explains how terrified he is, how God will punish him. Give me the head of your Canaan. I'll give you jewels. There is a speech. In fact, when the play was first to be done in Paris, I think the producer of the play suggested he cut the jewel speech. But in fact, the jewel speech is one of the most exquisite things in the play. It is a list of jewels. That's all it is. And yet each one builds and builds and builds until you are saying, oh God, collar of pearls, like 50 moons, a crystal that it is not lawful, which is not lawful for all one to look, nor may young men behold it unless they have been beaten with rods. I mean, just fabulous things. Amazing, wonderful, wonderful image being built up, and she's just, the head is shaking. I'll give you this. I'll give you this. Tell me what you want. I will give you, and then we get to it. The mantle of the high priest. I will give you the veil of the sanctuary. And that is the ultimate, because he is now saying the veil of the sanctuary is the holiest of holies. That's it. The holiest thing in the kingdom, that which is in the temple, behind which sits the tabernacle. I will give you the veil of the sanctuary. And what does she reply? Give me the head of Yukonan. Words suddenly are the most magnificent thing. The simplicity, the passion of words, the power of words, the imageries that words can create, and the simplicity of a single line repeated over and over and over again. Give me the head of Yukonan. And what can he do? What is left? He has offered her everything, and he must keep his word. And again, he responds with a remarkably simple line, a line that in itself is terrifying, because it is, every sentence of death is terrifying. Let her be given what she asks. Chop his head off. We don't very often think about how awful simple phrases are. awful as in worthy of awe. I'm using all of these words in their true sense. The awfulness of it. Let her be given what she asks. The audience, by the way, having listened to all of this, very often almost breathe a sigh of relief until they realize they are complicit in the execution of John the Baptist by so doing. But again, that's the power of words and the power of suggestion, because what the words are trying to do, what Oscar is trying to do, is demonstrate, in this sense, I believe, we are always complicit. We are complicit because Salome is all of us. Yochanan is all of us. And sadly, and having played him for 20 years, I can tell you it is very sadly, Herod is all of us. We all have those desires. We all have those passions. We all have those determinations. We have the fanaticism of the prophet, and we have the fanaticism of the acolyte. We have the lust, we have the desire, we have the cruelty, we have the selfishness of Herod. It's all in all of us. Each of the characters in this play is simply an aspect of humanity at its worst. And that's what makes the play beautiful. Give me the head of Yochanan, and Herod does. And Salome wins in that sense. She has got the object of her desire. And what is the object of her desire? It's not the head. In one of the most remarkable monologues in any play, particularly Oscar, but in any play, one of the most remarkable, it's up there with Shakespeare's finest. He gives Salome a passion to her fascination, to her desire, to her lust, because it is not the head that is the object of her desire. It is that one thing. I will kiss thy mouth, Yochanan. Why does she want the head? Not to please her mother. Why does she want the head? Not because he's pretty. Why does she want the head? I will kiss thy mouth. Holding that head in her hands, now she can kiss his mouth, and he cannot stop her because he no longer can use his voice. That mouth is only for her to kiss, her ultimate object of desire. The same desire that Herod had: drink wine, let me drink from the same cup, eat fruit, I love to see the marks of thy teeth. It's exactly that same thing, that possession of the mouth, where that incredible voice, she says, where is your voice now? Where is it gone? Where is it? It's gone. And I have your head. I have your mouth. I can kiss your mouth. I can do it. I will do it. And that is what she does. And it is hideous as they sit and watch this phenomenal, evil, vampiric moment play itself out. There is only one thing left for Herod to do. He kills her. Because the object of his desire is something so far beyond anything that he could ever truly possess, that what he desired is so ultimately, hideously awful, terrible, and fabulous, worthy of fable. There is a fabulousness, if that's a word, to what Salome does and how she achieves it. It is a single plan worked out through the entire sort of 2/3 of the play. From that moment when he says back, I will not let you kiss my mouth. I will kiss your mouth. I will kiss your mouth. That plan works its way through in the most, there is no, I don't think there's ever been a book or a novel or a movie or a zombie feature or anything quite so hideous as this. And at the time that Oscar was writing, we're also talking around the same period where we're writing books about Frankenstein and Dracula and various other monsters of the night. And he'd already written one of his own with the picture of Dorian Gray. So this moment, this culminative moment, I will kiss thy mouth, that everything that has happened is not for the head of Yochanan. It is so she can have that mouth. I think it is utterly glorious. And that is why the play is worth reading. That is why the play is worth reading aloud, because you will savor the sounds of the word. Read the words slowly. Listen to the words that are being spoken by your own mouth and realize their potency and their power. It is, to my mind, one of the greatest plays, and it is one of my favorite plays, and it was always one of my favorite roles. So there you are. That's Salome. I totally encourage you to go and read it. And if you have any questions about anything I've said, you can put them up, you can send them in, you can email us later on, whatever you want to do, it's all there for you. So there you are. Have we got any questions? Yeah. We've got some questions coming. I have some questions coming. What in Oscar's life drove him to express these themes, and with John the Baptist? I think because, in a way, because, as I said, we all have all of those characters within us. And Oscar, just as when in Dorian Gray, Oscar could say that, when he was asked which of the characters he felt was him, and he said, well, the world might think I'm Dorian, and I would like to think I'm Lord Henry, but the reality is I'm probably the rather pathetic artist, Basil Hallward. I think that Oscar could see all of himself, and therefore all of us, in each of those characters. And because he had a fascination with that which was biblical, I think he used it merely as all great writers do. You take a theme and you use it as a vehicle for the words that you want to say and for the comments you want to say about humanity. And always remember Oscar's notion that theatre is the greatest art because it allows humanity to look and see and feel what it is to be human, in all its frailty and all its failures. So I think he used this theme purely as a carriage, as it were, for what he wanted to say about passion, fascination, desire, and lust, and the power of the word. But thank you for the questions. Good one. What is, I don't know, Tim, I have theories about why he kills her. What is the academic consensus or majority reason why he's killed her, and what's my theory? I don't care what the academic theories are, because I've read an awful lot about it, and as I say, very good publication by the Cambridge University Press on Salome, very interesting, a series of essays. I mentioned in it, but I think you must only deal with your own personal opinions about it when you look at any play. And my own theory about why he kills her is because he's finally found something that he is actually worse than him. It is something disgusting, and she's gone from being an object of perfect desire to a monster of gargantuan proportions. She has turned from a butterfly into a cockroach, and he has to tread on her. He has to destroy her because she is too evil. She is that he could desire that is a reflection on himself, and he must destroy it. I think that would be it. Yes, Dennis, you're absolutely right. The role of Herodias is a very good question. Well, she's essential because she's there in the Bible, and she is Herod's wife, and it's incestuous because she was married to his brother, who he took the throne from, and Salome is her daughter, so she is the niece of Herod. So therefore, it is incestuous. His desire for her. Not only is his marriage to Herodias incestuous under Judaic law, but and I think still under the rules of Christian marriage, I think you can't marry your brother's wife because under the marriage thing, a man and wife is one flesh. Therefore, if your brother dies and you marry his wife, you're marrying your brother. It's very complex. I don't believe a word of it, but anyway, I think she is important because she is a demonstration. She is the most cynical character in the play. She is the one who is constantly abusing Herod's fantasies. She's the one who's constantly shutting him down. I mean, that wonderful speech he has when he comes on and talks about the moon being like a mad woman. She's railing through the sky. She's naked. She's like a mad woman. And Herodias, when he finishes rabbiting on about this, just turns and says, "No, the moon is just the moon. That is all." She is the voice of sanity in an insane world. And she diminishes him all the time. But also, when he asks for the dance, she knows that she knows his purpose, that it is a mental rape. And it is important that she is constantly saying, don't dance, don't give him this, don't do this, don't do this. So that when Salome agrees to dance, she is not only giving Herod what he is looking for, but she is denying her mother. The tradition is that when she danced, Herodias said to Salome, ask for the head of John the Baptist. What Oscar is doing is making it even more complex, that she is doing this not for her mother, but for herself and for her own reasons. So you need dramatically to have the mother there to set up that proposition. So she's quite important. She hasn't got a vast amount of dialogue, but what she has is incredibly funny. Does Oscar's evocative language owe anything to the Song of Solomon or Persian poetry? Oh my goodness, yes. When you read the Song of Solomon and you read, I will kiss you with the kisses of my mouth, that's almost Oscar Wilde, simply because Oscar stole it. And Oscar was a great one. Plagiarism never worried Oscar. Use the right words, use them, make use of them. Never say a thing once when you can say it 20 times. So yes, he did, and I strongly suspect Persian poetry as well. He would go and look for his source material, but remember, he was phenomenally widely read. He read everything he could get his hands on, and language that was appealing, and certainly a lot of biblical language is appealing. A lot of it is very boring, but the Song of Solomon is a magnificent piece of poetry. Of course, he would lift it. Jewish law says a man should marry his brother's widow, deals with property inheritance. Yeah, maybe it was the Christians who changed that. I can't remember. Being a lifelong non-believer, I cannot speak with authority on it. What point in Oscar's life did you write this? You're asking me dates again, and I can never. I've got to the age, and it's just gone up another number, when I can't remember dates. Can't remember names and I can't remember dates, so you have to bear with me. I'll look it up and we'll send you. We'll put it up on the site or something. Language decadence of this writing as opposed to the marginally less decadent language through other writings. Yeah, I think that he really went to town on this one. I think he really indulged in it. In the earlier plays, he played with decadent language. He used it, things like the Duchess of Padua. But in this one, I think this one was the perfect culmination of the potential of powerful poetics. He was always playing with words. This one, I think this one mattered to him. I think the way this poured out of him. I always get I don't know whether it's true or not, but I always get this image of him. This was a kind of deeply satisfying. I'm trying to be polite, but I think that there was a deep satisfaction in the way that he wrote this, and a tremendous sense of indulgence in his own power of language, but certainly in terms of his capacity for construction. Remember, it's a one-act play. It's not written long. It plays long. It's not written long. I think his sense of purpose in writing this was to find a satisfaction in the power of words and the use of words and the building of poetic images. And I think he found it. What was going on? Well, culturally at the time, don't forget, everything that Oscar wrote was about corruption. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. All the plays were about class and corruption. This play is about corruption. Also, there was a deep sense of the religious, as we say. He couldn't put the play on because the religious side of it. but he all around him, Herod represents a kind of corruption that if you have power, you can get whatever you want. And what he wanted was, and, the Victorian London at that period was riddled with corruption, and corruption at the very highest level of government and of industry and business. And London was rife with prostitutes, rife with rent boys. And they weren't doing it for the pleasure of it. It was the only way to make a living. It was the only way to eat. It was long before a welfare state. That wouldn't arrive properly until the second, 1945, 1946. And we're talking about the 1880s and 1890s. So poverty was endemic, corruption was endemic, and the corruption of minors was endemic. And that was why the law was passed for the protection of young girls and boys, the acts of gross indecency, which eventually were the very ones that that prosecuted Oscar. I think Oscar saw that corruption in the world around him, and I think he also sensed it very much within himself. In what way was Salome influential in theatre and other arts? Obviously, the opera by Richard Strauss, he was fascinated by as well. It's weird. It's a play that has never had a huge amount of productions. There was a production in the late 60s, I think, or early 70s, which was almost balletic in its, and again, I'm getting old. I can't remember the name of the actor. There was a film made by Ken Russell that I truly hated, which Glenda Jackson played Herodias. I think it was a total misunderstanding of what Oscar was about. It was Ken Russell sort of indulging himself. And then there was Berkoff and our production back in 88. And that really did erupt, because when we took it the following year to the Edinburgh Festival, the reaction of the London critics was absolutely, we thought it was way out of proportion for the fact that just production from Dublin of Oscar Wilde Salome that we brought. And we only did it because it was the 60th anniversary of the first first English-speaking production at the Gate. But it sort of was like fireworks going off. Suddenly everybody began to notice this play existed again. Then we brought it in 1990, we brought it to America, to the Spoleto Festival in Charleston, South Carolina, and exactly the same kind of reaction happened. People suddenly rediscovered this, what I still think is an absolutely exquisite play. But I think the effects that it had are few and far between, because it has never been staged regularly enough to have a profound effect. Yes, Penn, he does. He uses the biblical images. It's almost like he's bathing in the biblical images, because the biblical images are so wonderfully poetic. When he writes in De Profundis about he writes about the Last Supper in De Profundis, this gathering of friends and sharing of the wine and bread and things, and he makes it almost fairy tale like. It's poetic. He looks upon, as he says, the whole section of De Profundis, which is we call Christ the artist, that everything about him, from his birth, from his ministry, from our entry into Jerusalem to the Last Supper, and a week later they crucify him. It's almost like a work of art. And to Oscar, to the artist's imagination, it is poetic. Whether you have faith in it or not, there is a certain beauty to it. And the language of the James Bible accentuated, some might say exaggerated, that poetic aspect of the life of Christ, which Oscar is drawing upon to build his own poetic for this particular play. Is Wilde forecasting his own death through Salome? Reaction to his arrest trial? I don't think so. I think it's interesting that he actually forecast his own death in so many ways, as he did, for instance, in the character of the non-appearing character of Bunbury in The Importance of Being Earnest. I think in many things that he wrote, he was sort of forecasting it. I don't know. I don't think that it was an actual sense of being prophetic. I think it was to a large extent coincidental. But what we begin to realize is that chance is a very strange thing. Go and read your Jung. You'll get some answers to that. Yes, Marcy, her power does go beyond skin deep because it's compacted, it's compounded. But what you are seeing is the innocent mind learning very quickly what its own power is. A baby learns its power very quickly. A baby knows that if it keeps screaming long enough, somebody will come and put a nipple in its mouth. It's that kind of extremity that the pure innocent picks up very quickly, that the child who jumps up and down and stamps and refuses to eat its broccoli will sooner or later be given a cookie. These are the things that we learn from innocence. Innocence in its purity is the cruelest thing on the planet because innocence has no sense of balance. That's why she's powerful. Anyway, look. Any other questions? Please email. We'll talk to you. I just want to say a few words about what we're up to. Next week, I'm going to do 1 week only on the subject of James Joyce, and we're doing that because it is Bloomsday coming up on the 16th of June. Bloomsday, for those of you who don't know, is the fictitious or the day in which, in 1906 in Dublin, Leopold Bloom took a journey through the streets of Dublin, and it is based totally on the journey of Odysseus or Ulysses returning to Penelope after the Trojan War. So he wrote a book about Dublin, One Day in Dublin, which is based purely on Homer's Ulysses. It is a fascinating book. It is an incredibly complex book, and maybe one of, if not the most important novel of the 20th century. I'm going to talk just for a little bit about it, just to introduce you to the idea. And also on Bloomsday itself, we're going to be putting out some readings from it. We normally do this in various pubs and bars. And why pubs and bars? James Joyce once sort of, how do you cross Dublin without passing a bar? And the answer is you go into every one of them. So he also said that if Dublin were ever destroyed, he wanted to write a book where you could rebuild it just from this one novel. Of course, it was total nonsense, but it is quintessentially Dublin. It is a remarkable novel. It is a very complex novel. I'm going to be talking about it next week. I am not a major authority on James Joyce. It is really by way of introduction, and I will do my very best. Coming up, we're going to be having a webinar on the topic of the Algonquin Circle of New York, which we will have a guest presenter doing that. And we're also going to be, come July, we're going to do a whole series of talks on and about Shakespeare. Not particularly about any particular play, but on Shakespeare, on the acting of Shakespeare, the structure of Shakespeare, the history of Shakespeare, the way he writes, what he writes, how to read. For those of you who are a little nervous of reading Shakespeare, and for those of you who are a little nervous of going to see Shakespeare, and if you have friends who suffer from this appalling condition, please encourage them to tune in, because I promise I can help. I have a cure. I have a cure. I have a bottle here. No, I have a cure to introduce you to everything about Shakespeare that terrifies you, and we can fix it. So that's what we're going to be planning to do over July. I also told you what about the upcoming season. As we know, we have no idea when we're going to be allowed back on stage. Theatre, in its most gloriousness, is the gathering together of a group of people in a small confined space so that we can share the experience of drama. COVID is preventing that happening. So for the moment, we don't know when we can do it. I'm hoping we can do it this time next year, come spring, maybe April, May next year, but nobody knows. We have to entertain our audience. We want to give you some kind of service. So we are going to do something. We haven't been doing those Zoom play readings that some theatres have been doing. We have other plans. I'm going to bring back the glories of radio drama. Radio is one of the best mediums for drama. And for those of you old enough to remember what it can be like, it is a wonderful thing. And I've done it. I did it for an awful lot of my life. So we're going to start. We'll be in the fall. We're going to be doing, for instance, we are dramatizing some of Oscar Wilde's fairy tales, and we're also going to do a radio dramatization of Robert Louis Stevenson's magnificent tale of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And that will be done as a radio piece as well. And we're also going to video and do a production of, one of two. I'm still waiting to clarify the rights. But it's either going to be, those of you who've seen our productions of the plays of John B. Keane may look forward to this. If you love Sharon's Grave, if you love Scythe, and many of you did, and ask when are we going to do another, I'm hoping we'll either get the rights for his play or an adaptation of his book, The Matchmaker, which is wonderfully funny. And if you loved the characters in Sharon's Grave and Scythe, you will adore The Matchmaker. If I can't get that one, there is another one I want to do called The Tailor and Anstey, a similar kind of construct. I may end up doing both. We'll see what we can do. But that will be for the fall. And in February, which is our Shakespeare slot, we are going to be doing Measure for Measure. As I've mentioned before, it's, to my mind, a wonderfully important play for now, because it is about two things: the abuse of authority and the whole Me Too movement. And so we are editing it down to about a 90-minute piece, and we will be presenting that in February. So that's the immediate plans. There'll be lots of information coming out. For those of you we have emails for, you'll be getting sent emails. For those of you in Pittsburgh, we hope to, we'll see you there. For those of you around the world who are joining us on these webinars, once we start live streaming, I hope you stay with us, and I hope you watch some of the offerings we have, because you'll be seeing not just me, but some of our glorious actors as well. So that's it for now. Thank you for being with us. Always remember one thing: at the moment, every dollar counts for so many appalling and precious causes. But still, I ask you, whatever few dollars you have, please consider pushing the big red button with us. Go to our website, find the donation point. Please, as I say, the amount, no wonder how small or how large, $5, $20, $25,000, whatever you've got, please consider sending it to us, because we have to keep the ship running. We have to keep paying the rent and doing the business. Apart from that, thank you for being with me. We will see you all again next week, I hope. In the meantime, stay safe, stay well. Thanks. Bye.